People living in this land 7,000 years ago were already making wine and shoes.
The world's oldest shoe was found right here in this hole.
In the 4th century, Armenia adopted Christianity as its state religion.
Armenians were first Christian nations.
In the early 20th century, Armenians went through the horrors of genocide.
In total, nearly 1.5 million Armenians were killed brutally.
Armenia broke free from the Soviet Union in September 1991. What has independence brought to this ancient country? In 2008, archaeologist Boris Gasparian could have rivaled Armenian politicians in terms of popularity. News of his discovery had spread far and wide throughout the world. In caves in the mountains around the village of Armenia, the archaeologist had found a settlement dating back to the year 5000 BC.
These vessels were among the first finds. When we saw them, it was immediately clear to us that they dated from the Copper and Stone Age. That means that people were already living in these caves 7,000 years ago. Communities maintaining very close contact inhabited an area between the North Caucasus and Mesopotamia. They used to migrate from north to south and south to north.
Excavation work at the site of the ancient settlement has been going on for 3 years now. But archaeologists are still unable to say with certainty what kind of people lived in these caves 7,000 years ago.
Just take a look. You can see a very interesting ritual. The bodies of babies under 1 year of age, they were buried intact. But women, between the ages of 11 and 25, were simply chopped up before burial.
The most interesting artifact was found in the caves in 2008. The world's oldest shoe was dug up from a depth of just half a metre. It's estimated to be about 6,000 years old.
The world's oldest shoe was found right here in this hole. It took us a great deal of effort to get it.
The discovery of the settlement is an event of crucial importance to the small Transcaucasian country. Armenians are proud of the long history of this land, and the find reinforces their pride. In Armenia, there are few other handicrafts that can unite generations as much as the making of hachkars, or tombstones. The art has undergone little change throughout its 1,000-year history. A hammer, chisel and stone are all that's needed for the job. A man and his grandson are working on this hachkar.
I like the job. It is handed down from generation to generation. The one who taught me was my grandfather.
Over the course of his long life, the elderly man has made scores of hachkars. Nowadays, he mentors his grandson in the ways of hachkar sculpting.
There are millions of hachkars here, each with a difference. They differ just as people do. All of the carving patterns are different, even on some particular tombstone. This is to show that the world is imperfect.
Each grave or monastery has its own tailor-made tombstone. Normally, it takes about a month to make one. This cemetery in the village of Noraduz is one of the oldest in Armenia. The long history of this Caucasian country, a history packed with drama, can be traced by looking at the tombstones.
Up until the 7th century, hachkars looked quite simple. There was nothing but a cross atop the first cross stone.
The hachkars in this cemetery don't feature carvings, although the graveyard of the small town of Spitak is much larger.
Before the quake, it was a small cemetery. But as you can see, now it's quite big. It took some 40 days to bury quake victims.
Artur Sarkisyan comes to the cemetery quite often. He always follows the same route in this mournful place. as he moves from one grave to another. On December the 7th, 1988, he lost nearly all of his family. It was 10:40 a.m. when the first tremor with a magnitude of 7 on the Richter scale shook Spitak. 30 seconds later, the tiny town was no more, just a pile of rubble.
The main street in the center of the town was here. When the quake struck, there were people in every apartment of the 5-story houses that stood here on both sides of the road. Practically all of them fell apart. Only roofs lying on the asphalt could be seen after the quake.
There is a church where Artur's house once was. More than 20 years on, there are few reminders of that devastating earthquake. But in the cold month of December in 1988, people around the world came to know the name of this small town in Armenia. Aid began pouring in from across the Soviet Union. At that time, Armenia was part of it. The powerful earthquake affected all of Armenia's northern areas, as well as Spitak. The scale of the disaster only became apparent after several days. Just a handful of people had survived under the rubble. The earthquake had claimed 25,000 lives.
When the smoke cleared away 3 or 4 hours after the earthquake, it became clear that the town had been razed to the ground. Aid began arriving towards the evening because there were no roads.
Some of the aid came from numerous diasporas in foreign countries. This footage shows Charles Aznavour, a French singer of Armenian origin, after a visit to devastated Spitak. He vowed to do his best to help Armenia.
I was really shocked by what I saw in Spitak. I couldn't have imagined the appalling scale of that disaster, because so many people were killed here.
The French singer set up a fund for the earthquake-struck country. The money was used to restore dozens of houses in Spitak and Goris, Armenia's second largest town. It too had been affected by the disaster. The town's residents unveiled a monument to Aznavour as a token of gratitude to him.
We unveiled the monument on the 22nd of September in 2002. People from all over Armenia came here. There were also visitors from France.
After the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991, reconstruction work in Armenian towns slowed down. The new houses built in the 3 years after the disaster made up only 1/5 of those destroyed by the earthquake.
We came here on December 2nd. We were given a room on the ground floor and we still live here. Most of the tenants here are refugees.
Garun Ayropetian and his family also lost their home in December 1988. They became refugees, but not as a result of the earthquake. It was a bloody inter-ethnic conflict that forced them to flee. Armenia is a republic situated in the Trans-Caucasus. It joined the Soviet Union in 1922. When the republic won independence in September 1991, this was the most troubled region in the post-Soviet space. The country was at war with neighboring Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh.
We chopped the wood for the winter. And this is our home. These are my grandchildren doing their homework. It's our stove. We made it ourselves because there's no other source of heating in here.
His house in Azerbaijan's capital of Baku was larger and more comfortable. They had to leave their native city in a hurry. Already there was gunfire in Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijanis were fleeing that area. Meanwhile, the situation for Armenians living in Azerbaijan was becoming increasingly dangerous.
We went through quite a good deal. For instance, my husband had an aunt with a dark complexion. It was easy to see that she was Armenian. She was attacked several times on the metro.
The conflict's root cause stems from the 1920s when Azerbaijan and Armenia joined the Soviet Union. Nagorno-Karabakh, a territory where Armenians had been the predominant population from time immemorial, was placed under Azerbaijan's control. It didn't matter much who controlled Nagorno-Karabakh back then. The Soviet republics were part of an integrated country. But the time bomb eventually went off, and violence erupted between the two in the late 1980s.
The Soviet government showed signs of weakness. With the start of perestroika, when people were told they could speak up without running the risk of being imprisoned or executed, people across the Soviet Union began talking about their concerns. Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh started asking questions. They wanted to know why they were part of Azerbaijan, even though Armenia was next door, a country populated by people of the same nationality and culture.
Baku flatly rejected Yerevan's demand that Nagorno-Karabakh be handed over to Armenia's control. Meanwhile, the first major interethnic conflict was gathering pace in the Soviet Union's south. It had been fueled by events in the small town of Sumgait, near Azerbaijan's capital.
The Sumgait massacre was the point of no return. People were murdered. Mind you, people were killed not in Nagorno-Karabakh itself, but in Sumgait, a town situated far from Nagorno-Karabakh. There is no war now, but there is no peace either. There is no peace treaty.
I'm certainly nostalgic about those times. Here is Nizhny Tagil. I was in the army then. Memories of those days come thick and fast. And this is Baku.
There is a map of the Soviet Union in Garun Ayropetian's workshop. As a tailor, he needs something colourful to rest his eyes on. But the map also gives food for thought. He recalls the days when everybody lived in the same country, a country that later burst at the seams.
This is our peace barrel, which was founded in November in 2001. So it was decided to found the barrel, to call it peace barrel, and to open only when peace will be signed between Azerbaijan and Karabakh.
Nobody at this distillery can say with any certainty when cognac from this barrel will be bottled, but it has every chance of becoming a vintage brand, adding to the distillery's rich collection.
Stalin sent to Churchill 300 bottles of branded wine each year, and that's why they call it diplomatic brandy.
The British Prime Minister was not alone in appreciating this brandy. In Soviet times, Armenian cognac was the main symbol of the Republic. Many agreed that the strong beverage produced in the Trans-Caucasus could easily compete with French cognac manufacturers.
The flavor is intense. You can sense a whole bouquet of flavors. It's a unique beverage. Here I can detect the flavor of our brands, the sunshine of Ararat Valley, and the beauty of our landscapes.
The production process in Armenia and France is totally identical. The spirits are distilled in the same way, and the oak barrels look very much alike. The Armenians are just proud of their product, as the French are of theirs.
I think that cognac is one of the most important and most recognizable brands produced in Armenia. I would even say that it's one of Armenia's symbols.
Mount Ararat can be seen from several spots in Yerevan. The entire history of the Armenian people is linked to it, but it's off limits to Armenians. They can't reconcile themselves with the loss.
Russia is that so much...
I understand that, Kelly.
Yes,
I'm not saying it would be a good idea.
Democracy.
Under the War Powers Act, the president must get approval from Congress within 60 days after ordering U.S. forces into combat. Neither President Barack...
The mountain's height is 5,137 meters above sea level. According to the Bible, Mount Ararat was the first landmark that Noah saw after escaping the Great Flood.
Mount Ararat, you know, in the Bible is testified, and it is connected with Noah's Ark. So after the deluge, Noah's Ark stopped on the peak of Mount Ararat.
However, Ararat is the main source of pain and suffering for Armenians. Under the 1921 agreement signed by Soviet and Turkish leaders, the symbolic mountain was left on the other side of the border.
The mountain today it is in the territory of Turkey, but still it continues to be Armenian symbol. When Armenian people they are asked about their national identities, they start with the Mount Ararat.
The fact that Ararat is no longer in their territory also serves as a reminder of the greatest tragedy of the country's people, the Armenian genocide. Genocide is the word used in Armenia to describe the policy pursued by the Ottoman Empire towards ethnic Armenians from the late 19th century through to the 1920s.
In total, between 1894-1922, between 30 years, nearly 30 years, nearly 1.5 million Armenians were killed brutally.
At the same time, Turkey was the first country to officially recognize Armenia's independence in 1991. Today, Turkish society is divided over the events that led to the deaths of 1.5 million Armenians in the early 20th century. Yet Ankara refuses to officially acknowledge the fact that what happened a century ago was genocide.
It's one of the hardest and thorny problems between two nations. What is the fundamental problem? The fundamental problem here is that Turkey, instead of facing its own history, tries and keep trying to deny the very part of Turkish shameful page of its own history. Armenian genocide, rewriting history, is one of the dangerous processes in every society.
Ankara supported Azerbaijan at the height of the ethnic conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh. It closed its borders to Armenians. The border between Armenia and Azerbaijan is likewise locked up. Yerevan Airport is the main gateway to Armenia. Travelers have little choice considering Yerevan's difficult relations with neighboring countries. The easiest way of getting to Yerevan is by air.
You have to go by air if you want to leave Armenia. That's the only way, because this country has been blockaded throughout the post-Soviet period. Of course, Armenia has land borders with Georgia and Iran, but there is little cross-border traffic there. Therefore, going by air is still the best option.
Nearly every plane is filled to capacity. It's clearly demonstrated by flights going to Russia, which is now Armenia's biggest economic partner. One of the largest Armenian diasporas is found in Moscow.
Aviation is the only means of transport for Armenia. It's obvious that there is no other way out. That's why our planes are always full of passengers.
Armenia was the world's first country to turn Christianity into a state religion. That was way back in the early 4th century AD. For more than 15 centuries, Armenians have regarded faith and church as a substitute for the state.
Saving human souls and preserving the nation are the two missions pursued by the Armenian Church today, as it has been doing throughout its existence. We are doing our best to remedy the harm done by the genocide of Armenians and 80 years of godlessness under the Soviet regime.
Fortunately, the Soviet campaign to stamp out the church had little impact in Armenia. It didn't affect the scores of ancient monasteries. Many of them are over 1,000 years old. It's now possible to reach the Totev monastery, one of Armenia's oldest, by cableway. It's the world's longest reversible ropeway. The 15-minute journey offers a magnificent view of a deep, picturesque gorge.
We are in the cabin of the Totev cableway, the world's longest. It links the village of Avadzor to the Totev monastery. It is 5,750 meters long, and its highest point above ground is 320 meters.
When the cableway was opened in October 2010, the hope was that it would attract foreign tourists. Its design is unique in many ways. For instance, the nearly 6-kilometer-long cableway has only 3 supports. European specialists helped to build it.
This is our main electric generator. It produces 533 kilowatts. Here you can see the emergency diesel generators. If the electricity fails, we will turn these on and evacuate the passengers. We have a great safety system in place.
Most of the cable car passengers are people living in nearby villages who get free transport. The influx of foreign tourists is small for the time being, but the businessmen who have invested in the ambitious project believe that in a couple of years, Armenia will become a popular tourist destination. Hotels and campsites are already being built around the monastery and the cableway.
We need water of different temperatures to treat gastrointestinal diseases, gastritis in particular. If the patient is suffering from a high acidity of gastritis, the temperature of the mineral water we give him is between 50 and 53 degrees Celsius. In low acidity cases, it's from 30 to 35 degrees.
The town of Jermuk lies in the mountains. During the Soviet years, people here already knew how to attract tourists. A spa similar to the celebrated Karlovy Vary resort has been in operation in Jermuk for decades.
The composition of our water is even better than that of the water at Karlovy Vary in the Czech Republic. Our water contains more ions, cations, and minerals.
Local mineral water is yet another Armenian brand. It is true, though, that it's not as famous as cognac or ancient monasteries, but residents of Jermuk hope that the water and spa resorts will be another incentive for people to visit Armenia.
The Jermuk mineral water springs from the ground in this gorge. Its temperature is between 45 and 60 degrees. These salt sediments result from our mineral water.
For the time being, only tourists from Russia visit the Jermuk springs. This huge bucket contains molten aluminium. It'll take several hours and a production process involving a dozen phases for the aluminium to be turned into superfine foil. This plant is one of Armenia's leading industrial enterprises. Like many others, it was inherited from the Soviet era. But like most other industrial plants, it stood idle during the first years of independence. That was a very difficult period for this nation. The plant's revival began in 2000, when it became part of a Russian holding.
The plant was reopened after modernization. Despite the crisis, it has grown stronger with each passing year. Russians and Armenians work here together. The assets are Russian.
Artsrun Stepanyan represents what might be called the local aluminium dynasty. His father used to work at this plant.
My mother and father used to work here. Now it's time for my brother and me. I'm not a unique case. Everybody here has taken the job over from their old folks.
The plant is one of the most successful in the country. It should come as no surprise. They have Russian investment and the whole of the Caucasus as their market.
For example, the color of immortelle is yellow. We get dyes from herbs. A mixture of many dyes makes the rug look darker. It looks lighter if there are fewer dyes. The root of madder produces a very beautiful red dye.
No chemicals are added, nothing but natural components. Making rugs is a family business too. The subtleties of this very old Armenian handicraft are handed down from generation to generation.
Each little square means a knot. They weave row after row. Every color is here.
Like the aluminium plant, this factory has a Soviet past behind it. Then automatic looms were brought in to make rugs quickly and in large quantities. Nonetheless, ancient technologies have become popular in Armenia since independence.
It takes a month for a weaver to complete 1 square meter. It's a very difficult job, taking a lot of effort. For that reason, their prices are higher than those of machine-made rugs. But then having such a rug at home is seen as a sign of wealth.
There are some 10 million ethnic Armenians around the world. Just over 3 million of them live in Armenia. The Armenians at home believe that the worst of their country's history is a thing of the past. In Yerevan, they like to say that nights are at their darkest just before dawn. People across Armenia believe that dawn has already broken over their country.